Welcome to Neural Nexus Podcast, where we explore the hottest topics shaping the world. Let's dive in.
Okay, so you want to dive into Selena Gomez's reaction to this immigration news?
Yeah.
We're looking at this People.com article called Selena Gomez Sobs in Raw Since Deleted Video with Mexican Flag Says All My People Are Getting Attacked. She posted this pretty tearful video back on January 27th, 2025, and then it kind of just vanished.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack here, like her raw emotion, the fact that she used the Mexican flag, and especially this deleted line. Apparently, it's not okay to show empathy for people.
It is really interesting to see how celebrity activism is kind of clashing with such a charged political landscape these days.
Exactly. But before we get into all that, I think we got to kind of set the stage with some context, right?
Yeah.
The article mentions the surge in immigration arrests.
Right. The article highlights a nationwide ICE crackdown that happened on Sunday, January 26, and ended with 956 arrests, which was the highest single-day number since Trump got back in office. But to really understand how big this is, I think we need to look past the headlines.
Okay, so help me understand this. What exactly does ICE even do, and what are these crackdowns all about?
So ICE, or Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is the federal agency that's responsible for enforcing immigration laws in the U.S. They conduct these targeted operations that people often call crackdowns to catch people they suspect are in the country illegally.
So these crackdowns aren't like a new thing.
Not at all. They've been a pretty regular part of immigration enforcement for decades now, no matter which political party is in charge. The People.com article actually points out something pretty interesting. Deportation numbers during Biden's first term were about the same as during Trump's first term.
Wait, really? I thought Biden was supposed to be a lot easier on immigration.
That's what a lot of people think, but the data shows something different. The Migration Policy Institute, which is a nonpartisan think tank, says that Biden oversaw 1.5 million deportations during his first term, which basically mirrors the numbers from Trump's first term.
So it's not as easy as saying one president is good on immigration and the other is bad.
Exactly. It's a lot more complicated than that, and that kind of gets to the heart of why Selena Gomez's reaction is so interesting.
Because her reaction, goes beyond just the numbers.
Exactly. Her video is full of raw emotion, this sense of urgency, and even fear.
Yeah.
It's not just some detached policy debate. She's speaking from a place that's deeply personal for her.
Right. She's not just some celebrity jumping on a trending topic. She's been involved with this issue for years now.
You're totally right.
Mm-hmm.
In 2019, she produced a Netflix docuseries called Living Undocumented, which tells the stories of undocumented families in the U.S. And then in a Time op-ed that same year, she was really brave and shared her own family story of crossing the border from Mexico.
So her family's history is directly connected to this whole issue.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Her aunt crossed in the back of a truck, her grandparents followed, and her dad was born in Texas soon after. That personal history gives a whole new meaning to how she reacted in the video.
Okay, that makes her emotional response make a lot more sense. But can we talk about that deleted line? Apparently it's not okay to show empathy for people. That feels like the most important part of this whole thing.
Absolutely. And it makes you ask some important questions. Why would showing empathy for people, especially immigrants, be seen as a problem? What does that say about how people feel about this issue right now?
It feels like maybe we've gotten to a point where just acknowledging the human side of this whole debate is controversial.
That's a really smart observation.
Yeah.
It shows how divided people are about immigration and how we've kind of lost the ability to see each other as human beings in the middle of all this political talk.
And maybe that's what Selena Gomez is trying to do, to bring that human element back into the conversation.
That's a really good point.
But is using a celebrity's emotional response the best way to do that? Couldn't it be seen as oversimplifying a complicated issue? Or even worse, overshadowing the voices of everyday immigrants?
Those are really great questions, and they get to the heart of what people are saying about celebrity activism. On the one hand, it can bring much-needed attention to an issue. But on the other hand, it risks making complicated realities into just sound bites and hashtags.
So how do we know if Selena Gomez's video is actually helping or hurting the cause?
That's what we got to figure out. To understand the impact of what she did, we need to look closer at what she said in the video and how it might change what people think.
Okay, let's do that. What exactly did she say in the video, and how did people react to it?
The People.com article quotes her saying, "All my people are getting attacked, the children I don't understand." And later she says, "I'm so sorry, I wish I could do something, but I can't." These statements coming through tears and, being visibly upset got a strong reaction from both her fans and her critics.
What kind of reactions are we talking about?
Let's break down those reactions and see what they tell us about the power and the problems of celebrity activism when it comes to immigration.
Sounds good to me. Let's dive in.
People who support her praised her for using her platform to speak up, and especially pointed out how genuine her emotional response seemed.
Yeah, that makes sense. Her peers felt really real, not like some fake publicity stunt.
Right.
But what about the people who didn't agree with her? What were they saying?
There were quite a few different criticisms. Some people said she was being overly dramatic or that she didn't really understand how complicated immigration policy is, and others questioned whether celebrity activism actually does anything, suggesting it might be more about showing off than making a real impact.
That's a good point. Does a celebrity speaking out about something actually change anything?
That's the million-dollar question when it comes to celebrity activism. There's no easy answer.
Okay, but there has to be some way to measure the impact of something like this. Didn't the People.com article say something about social media?
Yeah, the article talks about how even though Gomez's video was deleted, it still started a huge conversation on social media. The hashtag Selena with immigrants, was trending on Twitter with thousands of users saying they supported her and sharing their own stories about immigration.
So even though the video itself is gone, the conversation is still going.
Exactly. And that's one way that celebrity activism can be effective. It can raise awareness, make people's voices louder, and change how people talk about things. It's kind of like throwing a stone into a pond. The ripples keep spreading out long after the initial splash.
I like that analogy. But those ripples can be unpredictable too, right? How do we know they're actually having a positive impact?
That's the challenge with any kind of activism, whether it's led by celebrities or not. It's about planting seeds, starting conversations, and hoping those conversations lead to positive change.
But wouldn't it be better if those conversations were led by actual experts, by people who have actually experienced immigration themselves instead of a celebrity?
Ideally, yes. The voices of the people who are most affected by these policies should always be the ones we hear the most. But the truth is, those voices often have a hard time getting heard in all the noise of the media.
So celebrities like Selena Gomez can be like an amplifier using their platform to make those voices louder.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think of it like a megaphone, making the messages and stories louder that might otherwise get lost.
Okay, that makes sense. But it feels a bit risky too, right? It's like giving someone a megaphone without knowing what they're going to say.
That's the risk you always take when you're amplifying something. There's always the chance of misinformation, oversimplification, or even manipulation.
Which brings us back to that deleted line. Apparently, it's not okay to show empathy for people. Do you think she deleted it because she realized she was oversimplifying things? Or was it more about avoiding backlash?
It's impossible to know for sure why she deleted that line. But it's worth pointing out that the statement itself, while it seems simple, is actually really loaded. It implies that showing empathy for immigrants is somehow controversial or even forbidden. And that says a lot about how polarized the debate about immigration has become.
It's like we've lost the ability to even acknowledge the human cost of these policies.
Exactly. And that's a dangerous path to be on.
Yeah.
When we dehumanize entire groups of people, it becomes easier to justify treating them inhumanely.
And that's where the personal stories like the ones shared in Selena Gomez's documentary become so important.
Exactly. They remind us that behind every statistic about immigration, every debate about policy, there are real people with lives, families, and dreams.
And maybe that's the real value of celebrity activism, not necessarily in finding solutions or changing policies, but simply in reminding us of that basic human element.
That's a really insightful point. It's about using their platform to connect policy with personal experience, to make the abstract more human, and to reach people on an emotional level.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together, but I'm still thinking about that deleted line. If showing empathy for immigrants is seen as a bad thing, what does that say about the political climate we're in right now?
It shows a deep-seated fear and anxiety about immigration. It suggests that we've become so stuck in our own ideological camps that we can't see each other as human beings anymore, or empathize with people who have different views.
It's like we're so focused on winning the argument that we've forgotten how to have a conversation.
That's a really good way to put it. And that lack of dialogue, that inability to engage with different perspectives is incredibly damaging.
But how do we get back to a place of dialogue, especially when immigration is such an emotionally charged issue?
It's not easy, but it starts with recognizing that we're all human beings and that connects us. It's about listening to each other's stories, acknowledging each other's fears, and coming to the conversation wanting to understand, not just wanting to be understood.
That sounds good in theory, but how does that actually work in the real world? What can we as individuals actually do to create that kind of dialogue?
That's a great question, and it brings us to a really important part of this deep dive. understanding the different ways we can engage with the issue of immigration. We can think about it on 3 levels: personal, communal, and political.
Okay, I'm interested. Tell me more about these levels of engagement. Okay, so walk me through these levels of engagement. You mentioned like personal, communal, and political. Where do we even start?
Well, let's start with the personal level. I think it's about looking at our own biases
Hmm.
and really educating ourselves about how complicated immigration is and challenging people around us who spread those harmful stereotypes or misinformation.
So it's about like having those hard conversations with our family and friends, even when it's kind of uncomfortable.
Exactly. It's about making those safe spaces for dialogue where we can disagree respectfully and, challenge each other's assumptions and try to really understand each other.
Okay, that makes sense for like the personal level.
Right.
But what about the communal level? What's that all about?
At the communal level, it's about getting involved in our local communities.
Yeah.
Like we can volunteer with organizations that help immigrants, go to community events, and, speak up for policies that promote inclusion and justice.
So it's about going beyond just individual actions and working together to make a change.
Exactly. It's about building connections between different communities,
Mm.
growing empathy and understanding, and creating a society that's more welcoming and inclusive.
Okay, I see how the personal and communal levels kind of work together. But what about the political level? That feels a little intimidating.
It can feel intimidating, but it's also where we can have the biggest impact. At the political level, it's about talking to our elected officials, voting for candidates who support humane immigration policies, and holding those in power accountable for what they do.
So it's about using our voices and our votes to push for change at like a bigger level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about understanding that immigration isn't just a personal or community issue, but a political one that needs collective action and solutions that address the whole system.
That makes sense. But it also shows how overwhelming this issue can be. Where do we even start to deal with something this complicated?
It's true, there's no easy answer. But remember, even small actions can make a difference. It all starts with that personal commitment to understanding that willingness to have those tough conversations and challenge our own biases. Then we can build from there, working with our communities and getting involved in politics to advocate for a fairer and more humane immigration system.
You've given us a lot to think about, but before we wrap up, I want to go back to Selena Gomez and that line she deleted about empathy. Do you think she ended up doing more harm than good by posting that video?
It's tough to say for sure, but I think what she did, even if it wasn't perfect, shows the power and potential of celebrity activism.
How so?
Her video, even though it was deleted, started a conversation, raised awareness, and put a human face on an issue that often gets lost in these abstract policy debates. She reminded us that empathy isn't a bad thing. It's a powerful tool for change.
And maybe that's like the biggest takeaway from all of this.
Maybe. It reminds us that we all have a part to play in creating a more just and compassionate world, whether we have millions of followers or just the courage to speak up among our friends and family.
I like that. Well, I think we've covered a lot today, from all the details of immigration policy to the good and bad of celebrity activism.
We've talked about the history, the emotional complexities, and the different ways we can get involved with this issue.
And I hope we've given our listeners the information and the motivation to keep learning about this important topic and to find their own ways to make a difference.
That's what we were hoping for. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.